Elena Harper gazed out at the city through the large window of her office, the golden hues of the setting sun casting long shadows over the skyline. At 31, she had built a name for herself in the corporate marketing world, sharp, determined, and unstoppable. She had worked tirelessly to earn everything she had: a leadership position, a comfortable life, and a marriage that, at least in the beginning, seemed like the perfect fit for her dreams. Ryan Miller was the charming, ambitious man she had chosen to share her life with. When they married, they envisioned climbing the ladder of success together, building an empire, reaching the top. But over time, Elena realized that only one of them was still climbing, and it wasn't Ryan. 2 years ago, he lost his job. At first, Elena wasn't concerned. "It's just a rough patch," she reassured herself, covering all expenses without hesitation. She had always believed in Ryan's potential and, more importantly, trusted that he would do everything he could to get back on his feet. But days turned into weeks, then months, and Ryan made no effort to find work. While she spent late nights crafting marketing campaigns and closing million-dollar deals, he slept in, watched TV, and spent money recklessly. Elena started to see the truth: this wasn't a temporary setback. Ryan simply didn't want to try. And worse, he was growing more comfortable living off her hard work while she carried the entire weight of their life alone. Elena had always been patient, but patience had its limits. Every conversation about finances turned into an argument, with Ryan dismissing her concerns as overreacting. He had an excuse for everything. "The job market is terrible right now," he'd say, while scrolling through social media on his brand new phone, one that she had paid for. "I need time to figure things out," he'd add, right before asking for another $5,000 to hold him over. It wasn't just the money. It was the entitlement, the lack of effort, the way he acted like her success was an inconvenience to him rather than a lifeline. Then, Elena found out she was pregnant. She had hoped, foolishly, that this news would shake Ryan out of his complacency, that the idea of becoming a father would ignite some sense of responsibility in him. Instead, he shrugged. "Another expense," he muttered, as if their child was nothing more than a dent in his lifestyle. That was the moment something shifted inside her. For years, she had carried Ryan like a weight on her back, convincing herself that love meant sacrifice. But now, it wasn't just about her. She had a baby to protect, a future to secure. And Ryan was just dead weight. As her pregnancy progressed, Elena found herself working harder than ever. She handled meetings, deadlines, and financial planning, all while carrying the life of a child who would soon depend on her completely. Meanwhile, Ryan continued his cycle of laziness and entitlement. He spent his days lounging around, ordering expensive takeout, and finding new ways to drain her bank account. One day, he casually mentioned that he needed $155,000 for a motorcycle. "It's something for me," he said, as if Elena hadn't been giving him everything for the past 2 years. Against her better judgment, she agreed, hoping, desperately, that this would be the thing to finally make him happy, to make him feel fulfilled enough to start contributing again. But, of course, it wasn't. Just 2 months later, with her belly swollen and her body exhausted, Ryan came to her with another demand. This time, it was $50,000 for a new car. "I need something respectable," he insisted, as if his complete lack of ambition wasn't already humiliating enough. For the first time, Elena refused. And for the first time, she saw something new in Ryan's eyes. Not disappointment. Not frustration. Pure, seething rage. Ryan's anger erupted like a storm. His face twisted with resentment as he stepped closer, his voice dripping with venom. "After everything I've put up with, you're going to deny me this," he spat, as if she were the one who had been freeloading off him for years. Elena stood her ground, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. "I'm done," she said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. "You don't deserve another cent from me." That was all it took. In a flash, Ryan grabbed a wooden bat from the corner of the room and swung it with terrifying force. The impact sent Elena crashing to the floor, pain radiating through her ribs as she gasped for air. The room spun as she clutched her stomach, panic surging through her veins. Was the baby okay? Was she okay? She struggled to move, her breath coming in short, painful gasps. And then, as suddenly as it had happened, Ryan was gone. He didn't check on her. He didn't even look back. He just walked out, slamming the door behind him, leaving her broken and bleeding on the cold floor. Elena's fingers trembled as she reached for her phone, her vision blurred by tears and pain. Every breath sent a sharp sting through her ribs, but she forced herself to dial the only number she could think of, Nathan Brooks. Within minutes, he was there, his voice filled with urgency as he helped her into his car. "You're safe now," he murmured, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The hospital lights were harsh, sterile, but the news brought a sliver of relief. Her baby was still alive. A fractured rib, deep bruising, but no internal damage. Still, as she lay in the hospital bed, reality hit her like a second blow. Ryan had left her there, injured and alone. No love, no regret. Just abandonment. Nathan sat by her side, silent but solid, as Elena processed what had to come next. There was no saving this marriage. There was no excuse left to cling to. Ryan wasn't just lazy or selfish, he was dangerous. And she refused to let him be a threat to her child. As the weight of that decision settled in, her resolve hardened. This wasn't just about leaving. It was about making sure he never had the power to hurt her, or anyone else, again. Elena wasted no time after leaving the hospital. With Nathan's unwavering support, she filed a police report against Ryan, detailing the abuse she had endured. Every piece of evidence, medical records, police reports, and even testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed Ryan's outbursts, painted a grim picture. She didn't care about the shame anymore. She didn't care about the image of the perfect couple she had once worked so hard to maintain. All that mattered was that Ryan would pay for what he had done. The legal battle was long and draining, but Elena was determined. No matter how difficult, she knew this was her chance to free herself, once and for all. When the day of the trial came, Elena stood before the court with a steady voice, recounting the years of manipulation, financial abuse, and physical violence. Ryan's eyes darted nervously around the room, but he never spoke. He couldn't. The evidence was undeniable, and even his attempts to twist the narrative only made him seem more guilty. The verdict was swift. Ryan was sentenced to a long prison term, without the possibility of parole. Elena watched as he was led away in handcuffs, his face twisted in disbelief, his arrogant demeanor shattered. For the first time in years, Elena felt a sense of peace. After the trial, Elena found herself facing a new reality. The world felt both empty and full at the same time, empty because Ryan, the man who had once been her whole life, was gone. Full because she was no longer shackled by the constant weight of his demands, his cruelty, his manipulation. Nathan was by her side every step of the way, helping her through the hardest days. The path ahead was uncertain, but she no longer feared it. She had survived the worst. And now, for the first time, she could focus on her future and the daughter she was about to bring into the world. The day her daughter was born, Elena held her in her arms, tears streaming down her face. She was overwhelmed by love, by a fierce protectiveness she had never known. And as Nathan stood beside her, smiling warmly, Elena realized just how much he had always been there for her. He had never asked for anything in return. He had been her rock, the person who saw her for who she truly was, not just the woman who kept everything together. There was no dramatic confession, no grand gesture, just a quiet understanding that, after all she had been through, she was finally in a place where she could be loved the way she deserved. As the months passed, Elena began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The scars from her past were still there, but they no longer controlled her. She found peace in the simple things, waking up to her daughter's laughter, the quiet moments spent with Nathan, and the growing bond they shared. It wasn't the whirlwind romance she had once imagined, but it was real, built on trust and mutual respect. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt truly safe. She had fought for her freedom, for her happiness, and she wasn't going to let anyone, especially not Ryan, take that away. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Nathan turned to Elena with a gentle smile. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft. "What if we made it official? What if we started this journey together, as a family?" Elena's heart swelled as she realized what he was asking. It wasn't about rescuing her. It was about standing beside her, equal in every way. "Yes," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes, I want that." And so, they started a new chapter. Not as savior and saved, but as partners equal, whole, and ready to face whatever the future held. A few months later, Elena and Nathan were married in a small, intimate ceremony. It wasn't the grand affair she had once dreamed of with Ryan, but it was perfect. Surrounded by close friends and family, Elena felt a sense of peace she had never known before. Nathan's hand in hers was a promise, not of saving her, but of standing by her side through everything. As they exchanged vows, Elena looked around the room, realizing how far she had come. She had started this journey as a woman broken and alone, and now, she stood before those who truly loved her, surrounded by people who saw her strength. Ryan's shadow loomed far behind her. He was a ghost, a distant memory, no longer a threat or a presence in her life. His attempts to manipulate or control had failed. He had fallen into obscurity, his reputation ruined by his own actions. Elena no longer cared about his fate. He had made his choices, and now he would live with them. But for Elena, life was brighter now. It was filled with love, trust, and a newfound sense of self-worth. As the years passed, Elena's life blossomed. She thrived in her career, no longer burdened by the toxic weight of her past. She was a strong, independent woman who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. Her daughter grew into a joyful, curious child, and together with Nathan, they formed a family that was rooted in love and mutual respect. Elena knew, without a doubt, that she had made the right choice, not just for herself, but for her daughter. She wanted her to grow up knowing that strength, self-respect, and love came from within, not from depending on someone who would tear her down. Ryan, meanwhile, continued his downward spiral. His time in prison was a harsh wake-up call, but by the time he was released, there was no redemption for him. He had alienated everyone who had once cared for him, his reputation permanently tarnished. No one reached out to him, and he faded into obscurity. Elena didn't need to hear about his fall from grace. She knew the justice had been served, and her satisfaction came from knowing that she had been the one to take back control of her life. One evening, as Elena and Nathan sat on the porch, watching their daughter chase fireflies in the yard, Elena realized just how far she had come. She no longer carried the weight of Ryan's betrayal, his cruelty, or his lies. She had freed herself from the chains of her past, and now, she was living a life of peace, surrounded by love and support. The woman who had once feared the future now faced it with confidence and hope. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Nathan reached over and took her hand. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "You're stronger than you realize." Elena smiled, squeezing his hand in return. "I didn't get here alone," she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. She had fought for her freedom, for the love she deserved, and for a future that was her own. And as she looked into Nathan's eyes, she knew that the best was yet to come. Ryan's name had become a distant echo in Elena's life. It had been years since she had heard anything about him, and frankly, she wasn't interested. His existence no longer had any bearing on her happiness or future. She had moved on, fully embraced the life she had built with Nathan and their daughter. And yet, even now, sometimes she couldn't help but feel a flicker of bitterness, a flash of the anger that had once consumed her. But those moments were rare. She had learned to channel her energy into what truly mattered, her family, her work, her peace. One day, as Elena was walking through a crowded street market with Nathan and their daughter, she passed by a man who caught her eye. It was Ryan. His once well-groomed appearance was now disheveled, his face lined with the struggles of the years. He didn't see her at first, but when he did, his eyes widened with recognition. For a moment, time seemed to stop. He took a hesitant step forward, his mouth opening as if to speak. But Elena, without hesitation, turned away, wrapping her arm tighter around Nathan's. Ryan stood there for a moment, frozen, as Elena walked away without a second glance. The years of manipulation, the emotional abuse, the physical violence, it had all led him to this lonely, pitiful existence. He had no one left. No one who cared. No one who would give him a second chance. And as he watched Elena disappear into the crowd, he realized something that was hard to swallow. She had been the best thing that ever happened to him, and he had thrown it all away. But it was too late now. She was gone, and he was left to face the consequences of his choices alone. Elena, on the other hand, felt nothing but relief. Seeing Ryan in that moment, broken and desperate, confirmed what she had always known. He was no longer a threat. His power over her had died the day she chose to stand up for herself. And as she looked up at Nathan, her heart full of gratitude, she knew that no matter what Ryan faced in the future, it would never compare to the life she had built for herself. As time passed, Elena's life only got better. The business she had worked so hard for flourished. Her relationship with Nathan grew stronger, and their daughter thrived. Elena was no longer just surviving, she was living. The woman who had once been trapped in a toxic, controlling relationship was now free to pursue her dreams, surrounded by people who truly cared for her. She had taken back her power, and it had made all the difference. Ryan, however, remained a distant memory. The life he had once envisioned with Elena was gone, and in its place was a sad reality of isolation and regret. He had ruined everything, and there was no going back. For Elena, that final chapter had closed, and what remained was the peace of knowing that she had fought for herself, for her happiness, and for the love that truly mattered. She had found it with Nathan, and together they had built a future that was hers, and only hers, to live.